is that I see a lot of people, I guess, a lot of challenges when it comes to the application. My name is Ahmed Elnaggar, and this is Monday Legal. Good morning. I'm Ahmed Elnaggar, and this is Monday Legal. Today, my dear guest is a very old friend, Yann Mrazek. He is the managing partner and founder of MHQ, the biggest multi-fiduciary organization in the GCC today.
Thanks a lot for having me. Great to see you.
Great to see you as well. Have been a few years we haven't met, but I see your name and your podcast all the time. I actually follow your podcast. I like it.
Thank you. We are having our 5th episode this week. So it's quite a topic because we have 1,000 foundation, the AFC and ADGM, the same time we have these 50. So we're ready to go for the next 50.
Congratulations. I have to ask you this question because I ask most of my guests.
Yes.
What's your coffee?
I don't drink coffee. I'm a tea man. So sencha every morning and in the office. So if you pay us a visit, you will see we have a selection of green tea in every one of our office, the AFC, ADGM, and all the others.
Fantastic. I'll take you up on that and I will come for a cup of tea. Can you please make a proper introduction of yourself and of your company to the audience so that people know you? I know you very well, but they would like to know and learn about you.
So Swiss origin, I arrived in this country in 2005 and lo and behold, nobody wanted to employ me. So I had to try to find a different avenue to build a business because I was Swiss, so not common law educated. I didn't speak Arabic like you and I didn't dress as fancy as you do. So I had to do it this way. And the vision was always to set up a multi-fiduciary firm. So what do we mean by this is corporate services platform with high, strong technical capabilities that services both the finance, so banks, asset managers, fund managers, financial advisors, and the proprietary investment. Think single family offices, foundation, sophisticated investment companies, trust. And we have linked these two worlds together because they are very much tied and we provide outsourcing services to all of them. So today we have roughly 200 people that do that out of ADGM and the AFC. We lead the market proudly, but we also engage a lot, probably we'll talk about it, with the government in trying to change policies, improve the positioning of this country as a financial and structuring hub. And we have seen it doing monster jumps in 2 decades.
That's very true. I agree with you. And fantastic what you have done in few years. Of course, not few years, in a great deal of years since 2005 until now. 2005. Can you tell me a little bit about the background for you yourself before you come from Switzerland? What did you do and where did you study, for example?
Yeah, so I grew up in Fribourg, Switzerland. For those of you that do not know Fribourg, this is the city where the Gruyère cheese comes from, the one that we put in the mighty fondue. So that's where I come from, and I was lucky because Fribourg University is the #1 legal university in Switzerland. So I studied there completely by accident. I went to check out the option, and because I was masquerading as a professional basketball player at the time, I picked law because it was very much compatible with the lifestyle of an itinerant athlete. So I did that. I studied a little bit longer than average. I studied for 7 years instead of 4.5. Took my sweet time, which was good because when I hit the market in Switzerland, Geneva, I passed the bar there, a little bit more mature than my peers. Passed the bar in 29, I was 29, and then I moved to the UAE because I wanted an adventure.
You got a great adventure here.
I got plenty.
Fantastic. Tell us a little, what do you focus on and what's your, let's say, the sweet spot in your profession? What do you like to provide as a service? Mm-hmm. I'm sure you have 200 people who are doing different stuff, but what is your specialty? What do you prefer and like to service?
So really I would say focus and what the part of the firm where I'm the most active is known for is everything around legacy planning, intergenerational structuring, asset protection. And that, if you step back, when I arrived in this country, you had nothing. The regulation was actually one federal law and it had one article in it that talked about succession. So nothing pretty much. So all this had to be created. So I was lucky. I was the chair of an organization called the Society of Trust and Estate Practitioners Arabia, branch, which is registered in the DIFC as an NPIO. And that group was able to work hand in hand with the government to identify the gaps in the legacy planning regulation locally and regionally, both to cater to the local clients, but also to position the UAE internationally as a financial and structuring center. So we worked with the government on a number of initiatives. I'm sure you are aware of the DIFC Wills registry. So we had our fingers in that foundation, this structure optimizing succession, a tool that was introduced into the market in 17 and in 18 respectively in ADGM and DIFC, and later on in Ras Al Khaimah. We were very much involved in launching this project, but also to educate the market, something that continues today. Just returned from training one of the large Swiss bank in the DIFC. So that is typically our day-to-day. Is, I would say, it's two things. It's continue to try and expand policies in this country. Think single family offices regulation, think how to optimize golden visa to combine them with people that actually hold assets under the foundation. Tax resident certificate needs to be optimized. So there's always some small tweaks. Exemption of proprietary investment under tax. So this is the lobbying part and the working with the government to improve the ecosystem. And then is to implement it for entrepreneurs. Uniquely, we as a firm with this skin tone have about 1/3 of our clients that are UAE and GCC nationals. It's a big sense of pride for us because when I arrived in this country, it was pretty much only European. And today, the fastest growing part of our firm is actually local people that realized it is time to act, consolidate their assets under modern tools, whether they self-administrate it or not. And this is also what attracts a lot of very sophisticated people to this jurisdiction. Think single family office, ultra high net worth, and the like.
That's amazing. And as you just mentioned, I realized that yes, since 2005 until now, there have been so many things and so many changes in the regulations, and the government have worked so much into making it really a hub for wealth structuring.
Yeah.
Where is the UAE right now comparing to the world, since you're coming from Switzerland, which was the hub worldwide?
And it remains relevant, but I'm very proud of where the country is today. And of course, you try to be objective when you pitch and you promote and you educate people on the benefit of this jurisdiction. But I do believe that the UAE today is on a path to something completely unique. 20 years ago, it was an offshore center, and we were a little bit slow in adapting best practice internationally. But the government realized that if we want to play with the big boys, we have to abide by international standard and then some, yet to be very nimble in trying to focus and adjust to the needs of the ultra wealthy. What does that mean? Today, most of the families that we know, they want a high regulation, high credibility jurisdiction because the lesser player will not be able to enter that. If you do not have a good source of wealth today, you cannot come to the UAE. People also want to control structure by themselves. This is key, especially the second, third gen that wants to invest, let's say, in angel investment and in VCs, etc. You cannot give that to a trustee and just let them do whatever. So people now want more control. So you need a jurisdiction where you live and where you structure, and then you can allocate, ventilate all around the world. And then people want privacy. A lot of data is in the public domain. We believe that privacy is the new super currency, and families are receptive to that. So they choose jurisdictions that have a very high level of privacy. Yes, you give your data to the registry. Yes, you share with them, with the custodians, but in the public domain, there's very little. And all three key registries in the UAE, whether the DIFC, whether the ADGM or Ras Al Khaimah, all have systems where there's a very high level of privacy. And all these elements, this ticks the box, now mean that the UAE is part of what I would define as the super jurisdiction. It is one of the top 10 to top 20 financial center in the world. In fact, the UAE is deemed a global financial center today and on the rise. It is, I think, top 8 in the world in terms of foreign direct investment it has brought into a little country like this. It's phenomenal. And it is top 10 in the world as a structuring center. So if you look at and you zoom out, it's really the UK, which has its own set of problems now. The US, which is pretty much stable, I would say. Hong Kong, which is more on the decline with a lot of push from China, and Singapore, which I think is stable. The only one of these 5 super jurisdictions is the UAE today, and for the right, correct, objective reason.
Amazing. So in your opinion, what are the key factors that made the UAE change or help the UAE since for the last 20 years, for example, transform from just one small Arab country, which is very recently established, into a giant player in this market?
Yeah. So I think it's two things. First is the vision of the leadership. This country is run like a high-tech business. It wants to grow. It needs to grow if it wants to be sustainable, because you have a lot of people here, a lot of people that want to come, but the local population is also growing. And if you do not have some sort of a healthy inflation, eventually it will not be good for the local people. So you have to be growing, you have to be forward thinking. You cannot just say, all right, we'll finish that project and we move to the next. Remember when the new airport was launched, everyone was saying, but the old airport is not full yet. The Swiss in me would have said, well, maybe you could do it later. No, you cannot. You have to be forward thinking and plan years ahead. And maybe you change your plans. That's fine. But you budget ahead of time. And this, I think, the leadership, it trickles down. If you are an entrepreneur here and you see that, and you see at the government, people being so active, proactive, engaged, etc., I think it puts a little bit more fire in your belly. And telling to that is the government-private partnership. This country would probably not be where it is today if there was not a very strong alignment between regulator, government, parties, the judges, the court, etc. Today, the UAE is uniquely aligned in terms of what are our master objective, how do we get there, and can we tap on the private sector to turbocharge our policies? And the answer is yes. And there's a lot of buy-in from all the players. I mean, you are a foreigner, I'm a foreigner, yet we understood that if we contribute a little, then maybe the government will realize that we can help each other and come up with some sort of new policies. So our firm, since 2006, has drafted 16 white papers aimed at becoming regulations, 6 of which have become law. And we're very proud about this. And we were at the time a very tiny firm and even smaller law firm. But it was not about this. It was recognizing an issue, looking internationally what was being done, come up with a solution, demonstrate to the government what would be the benefit for the government, both locally and internationally, and actually even adapt this solution to make it better than internationally. Did you know that the DIFC is today the jurisdiction with the highest level of asset protection among tier 1 financial centers? No one knows this. Yeah. And what do you need? You need a firewall provision and you need a statute of limitation, which is, I would say, reasonable. Cook Island has 2 years and it has a very poor reputation. The DIFC has 3, which is deemed to be balanced in a global world. And this is something new, something very, I would say, forward thinking. I don't think it's even put enough out there yet, but it will come. The same way the DIFC has now revamped its prescribed company regime, yes. And I think it will take the world literally by storm, because the world has gone out of offshore dematerialized structures, but now we have corporate tax to actually capture the filing. You can go back to a vehicle that is, yes, super sophisticated, but reasonably unonerous. And that is ideal if you want to capture people to the jurisdiction. They get familiar, comfortable, and then they invest more.
This is very interesting because I imagine that the DFC have made a few tweaks on this prescribed companies before, and they had changed it and return it back and so on. And it's very much in line with how the UAE is doing things. I've seen a lot of regulations and laws being introduced and then realized, no, that's not the right thing, and taking it back. And also, as you said, the business community and the public, they receive these changes with the high flexibility. Let me ask you this in line with what we're talking about right now. What are the trends when we talk about wealth structuring, and what are the structures, or what are the trends that most of the entrepreneurs are using right now?
So I think that today's entrepreneurial family are getting much smarter and better educated to modern tools. Back in the days, there was this concept of, we wait until something comes and we'll face that issue when it comes. Unfortunately, this has the ill effect of destroying value. So we have a few sad stories locally of prominent entrepreneurial families that did not have the proper thing in place. Everything stalled as a result, destruction of value, freeze, and then it goes to the court, which I think they try very hard, but they are not necessarily very well equipped to deal with a succession that is cross-border and amounting in billions. So I think what we see today is the willingness to recognize that by acting early, implementing wealth structuring, structure optimization before, aimed at preventing value destruction, you actually create value and you have better tool to continue to invest, allocate, ventilate, and often with some corporate tax benefit. If you have a foundation today that holds a pool of real estate, you can ask for fiscal transparency and there's zero tax on that.
Yeah.
The market doesn't know it yet. You have 12,000 real estate agents today in this city. We are trying to train the smartest of them, but not everyone knows that, unfortunately. And some people are still saying that you can go to a non-financial free zone to hold real estate, which you can, but what is the benefit for the client? Zero. So I think...
And it's a more expensive structure as well.
It is, and it's not sustainable. I mean, what is your car? Do you drive a Saab 9000 CD? No, it's discontinued. Today you buy a Tesla. Yeah. Well, the AFC, ADGM, and Ras Al Khaimah, they offer you a Tesla. So when you talk about the entrepreneurs today, I think it's increasingly the increased use of fiduciary structure, like foundation in particular, trust to an extent, but mostly foundation. Many of them are now starting to create family office function as a standalone, and it's again fiscally driven, because imagine you're Dera, where we used to share an office, entrepreneur, which has a family office function, which is embedded, which means carried in its LLC. It works perfectly fine in a non-tax world, but with corporate tax, you actually realize, oh, but I maybe capture, these streams may be mixed. So a lot of people are segregating these functions, putting them in one of the two financial free zones, and as a result have something very sophisticated, not only to help their current affairs, but also to grow. If you have let's say, a sophisticated investment vehicle in one of the two financial centers, it's easier to raise money. It is easier to do club deals with your pals for the next big thing that comes. So rise towards sophistication, increased use of domestic fiduciary structures, because if you have the right tools here, there's no need to go to offshore jurisdiction of a lesser caliber. That doesn't mean there is not a space for cross-border structuring. I think it's still there, but it's for the right reason, typically for double tax treaty benefit, access to US or other markets. But what the trend clearly is locally based entrepreneurs increasingly looking at local solution, not only for their local assets, not only for their regional assets, but for their supra-regional and global assets.
This is very interesting. When I came here, and probably it happened to you as well, you either found people structuring their assets through their LLC, which is the civil law and the local families and so on, or a lot are registering their assets with trusts. And it was usually offshore trusts, with nothing here. So since you understand the two concepts, where the common law and the civil law, the trusts and the foundations, which one do you think that fits more? And let's say, which one you think is more favorable for entrepreneurs who are from the region here?
It's very interesting what you ask, because comparative studies for the past 2-3 decades are always putting civil against common. I don't look at this. I do not look at it this way. First of all, I think they have both evolved to pretty much being entangled. Switzerland had looked at the trust regulation. Swiss, which is civil law courts, Swiss courts are looking daily at trust being implemented in Switzerland. Jersey, Guernsey, Isle of Man, they all have foundation which they incorporated into an otherwise common law regime. Did you know that even the US has a foundation regime now?
Oh, I didn't know.
So you have in Wyoming and I think it's New Hampshire. Wyoming better. We call that concept crisscross, where you actually take the best tools that are available and you implement them within the system that you have. I, as a Swiss, actually trust more a common law jurisdiction with decades of trust jurisprudence. That means decades of fiduciary relationship jurisprudence that would then apply that to a foundation, then the other way around, a civil law court that would look at a trust, which I do not believe most civil law courts get. So if you bring that to the UAE, you say, all right, so who should rule on trust or foundation? We think, and that the DIFC and ADGM were the best forums where to have a trust regulation that is in-house, like the DIFC trust law, or foundations. In fact, Ras Al Khaimah recognized exactly the same thing by saying, we are at the disadvantage of our product if we are unable to use the DIFC court or the ADGM court. And they are smart people, so they listened And what they've done is we are going to sign these MOUs so that people that have a Ras Al Khaimah Foundation can go in the DIFC or ADGM to have this ruled. Local courts today are, in my opinion, ill-equipped to deal with fiduciary structures, which is why many families are structuring through these financial centers, now which probably brings you to the local trust law, which I hear is under, not necessarily review, but under, let's think about it, how we can really improve so that it works.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve it.
Yeah.
I think it has its place, called the WACF is a very regional tool, and today local courts are ruling on WACF. So there is a spot for that. But to your original question, civil law, common law, which one is really better, etc. To me, it does not really matter. It's I would probably argue that someone that has ruled under common law is probably better equipped to deal with both foundation or trust today. But that doesn't mean that this is not a skill that can be learned.
Amazing. And for entrepreneurs from the region and businessmen, local entrepreneurs, and by local, I don't mean Emiratis, I mean people resident here and having business and investments and so on. Do you see a lot of foundations being established right now to structure the wealth here in the region, or still people using the traditional ways of having LSEs or a trust abroad?
So let's look at the numbers a little bit, yeah? The DIFC and ADGM together have just crossed 1,000 foundations last week. And if you add Ras Al Khaimah, you are, give or take, 1,380, I think, foundation as of this morning. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Now, let me blow you away. Half of this number was set up since the 1st January 2023. Half.
Wow.
What does that mean? And we are on this year, we think that there's going to be 550 for the year. That means that two things. One, that we have entered a period of maturity of the UAE as a financial center. That means that people are trusting the center, that are trusting the tools that exist here. Two, we are entered a period of mainstream consumption of DIFC and ADGM tool and product. The government, again, was smart. If you charge a foundation registration fee in the DIFC at $35,000, only a few will be able to use it, and that would make it complicated. Today, the registration fee of a DIFC foundation is $350. It's exactly the same price in Abu Dhabi global market. So it's very competitive. The government doesn't want to make money out of these tools. What it wants is to ensure that no value is destroyed, that people are confident, working, living, creating value in this country, investing in this country, and not parking money abroad. We believe that cross-border today is very challenging. Under the corporate tax, if you have a BVI that you manage from here, you have to report it for corporate tax. So why would you do so? Talked to an entrepreneur yesterday. He used to have a BVI. He used to have a JAFSA offshore entity holding real estate. He's swapping both for a foundation and a DIFC prescribed company to hold his business. Everything is here. Now, he still custodizes abroad in Switzerland, not to name it. And I do not blame him for that, because it's from a, I would say, allocation of assets, it's probably a sound strategy, but the bulk of his assets, the bulk of his value, 85% statistically of regional entrepreneur is in the region and increasingly structured through these domestic sophisticated structures.
So you spoke about the cost of the DIFC and ADGM being very little and very similar as well.
Yeah.
But I have a hard question for you. I don't know if it's hard for you, but it's important.
Should.
Is this for the ultra rich?
Emphatic no. And it could be. If you're ultra rich, if you don't do it, you're an idiot. But now, if you're an affluent plus, think a couple that has a villa here in Meadows too, maybe one of them is Muslim, the other one no, maybe the family of the husband has paid for the house, doesn't like the wife too much. Should they structure optimize? I would say yes, because remember what I told you about control? That little family that has two salaries can set up one of these structures, they can set it up, they can control it themselves, which means reduce the cost and be the beneficiary. If, God forbid, something happens to one of the parents tomorrow, there's no freeze on that asset. That house remains in the structure for the benefit of, let's say, the wife and their daughter. There's a continuity of use, and there's no potential avenues for the family that may not necessarily like the wife that much to go and reclaim that house. So we see quite a lot, and that also, if you can see it in the numbers. We have a lot of rich people in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, granted, but you do not get to 500 foundations per year only with rich people. That means that people like you and I mean, you're rich, I'm nobody, but people like you and I
Very
actually
humble.
went 240 structures
Yeah.
for their own personal use. Think real estate in Dubai, maybe I buy a second home, maybe I have a bank account, and maybe I do 1 or 2 investments. Simple, locally based, cost efficient.
What about the taxation? We haven't spoken about that. I mean, we spoke a lot about the foundation, but the corporate tax is here and it's going to be implemented and the people will start paying corporate tax. Why is foundation a favored product structure?
So let's step back first and let's try to understand why fiscality in general. You cannot be deemed a global player if you do not have some sort of sophisticated fiscal regime. We today have VAT, we have a number of import taxes and some hidden taxes left, right, and center. Luckily, the cost of living here is reasonably high, but people are still willing to stay, so that I think it's balanced. So the UAE was almost, I would say, encouraged to implement some sort of corporate tax so that it was deemed on par with others and not necessarily competing from a fiscal standpoint. There is no end game in trying to say we charge less taxes. The smart game is to say we are in the lowest bracket for these core activities among equivalent players. Think Singapore, think other quality jurisdiction. And once we have that, we make sure that we recognize the industry that we value the most and we do something called exceptions. So why do you think that the UAE has this family business regime? Because this is important for the economy. So if you meet a certain number of criteria as a family based here, you will get some of these incentives. Watch this space, some of which will be announced shortly. If you are a money manager coming from the UK, coming from Singapore, coming from Switzerland, whatever you are doing here is tax free because you are one of these activities that is completely removed. So that's another appeal for UAE to say, come here in a tier 1 financial center, establish here and cover the world from here. Perfect. That's why we have so many hedge funds that are coming here. And now you look at proprietary investment. So foundations are like funds, like a trust arrangement, an instrument that can be deemed transparent from a fiscal standpoint. That means that if you apply for transparency, having lodged your books of accounts, having them audited, the FTA will then look at this and will say, okay, this is a family foundation, the purpose of which was to consolidate assets which are revenue generating in this country. And because it is transparent, you are actually taxed in the hands of the beneficiaries. But if the beneficiary live in the UAE, when there is no personal tax, when there is no succession tax, and where I do not expect neither to be implemented anytime soon, then pretty much you have something that is completely tax neutral. So the question is, why are we doing that? Because why would the government not want to tax that? Well, because it's a healthy ecosystem. You want to, it's good to tax, but you also want to encourage entrepreneurship and reinvestment. So if you start to tax everything, then you will stop reinvestment. This country, as we discussed earlier, is big on invest here, continue to invest here and through here. So by having some of these tax efficient structures, funds, foundations, trust arrangement, you actually encourage the people that generate the most wealth in this country to double down, to continue to invest, as opposed to stalling them. That's the thinking about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. And this is probably the reason there's so many high net worth individuals have been moving to the UAE since 2020 until now. And I think last year was significant. There was so many, huge number of millionaires and billionaires moving to the UAE. What do you think about that?
So it's a combination of both. So it is true, the UAE for the past 2 years has been number 1 in the world at attracting high net worth and ultra high net worth. And that is significant, but it's not by chance. It's really by design, and it's not only tax. I think you need a combination of things. First, you need a good quality of life and you need security. We have both, and at a level that is world class. You have the connectivity and you have opportunities here too. If you come here, you're not just sitting on an island. No, you have good restaurants, you have business opportunities, you have conferences, you have lots of stuff that is happening. So I think that is attractive to a new breed of people. Some 20 years ago, 30 years ago, people have happily retired to Switzerland and do nothing. Today, if you want a little bit more action, the UAE is clearly one of the places to watch. The other thing is, it is increasingly difficult for a global player to secure a long-term permanent residency in a tier 1 quality country. If you want to go to Switzerland and get a C permit, which by the way, you'll still need to get taxed unless you pay a hefty forfait, of 200, 250,000 bucks, or if you want to go to Italy, where you will also pay 200,000 bucks straight up, not to be taxed, it takes time, and the permit is for 5 years renewable. You go to Singapore, where PR is 5 years, and people are literally scared of it not being renewed after 5 years. When you come to the UAE and say, look, we have recognized you as an entrepreneur. We, the government, invite you and your family and your advisors to come here for 10 years, no question asked. Here it is. That is very powerful in attracting people. In fact, last week, I had 2 super high net worth that flew in, done it red carpet style in 2 days. They just came for the golden visa. Yet, we took them to a proper dinner after, and they were like, okay, talk to me more about what I can do in this country. And this is really a strategy. Abu Dhabi has commissioned a substantial study on how to profile itself towards not the high net worth, but the super high net worth and the single family office world. This will be rolled out now, but they're already having a lot of success attracting these people for the past 2 years for the motives that we just mentioned, but also it is because we have the right structures in place. If you did not have trust, you did not have foundation, if you did not have sophisticated proprietary investment companies, these people would be less likely to make the full use of the ecosystem. Today, we have an ecosystem like no other, and the market is realizing this. And at a time where about 50% of the world's countries about to be voted, this is an unstable world. So when you have an island like we are, which is healthy and attractive and on the growth side, and that knows exactly what it wants to do, it's pretty good.
Yeah. You know, the region is all, let's say, as we all know, we grow up seeing the Middle East not so much in instability in terms of the security or whatever political position. On the economical position as well, there's a lot of instability, but on the positive side. So I see Qatar is doing amazing. Egypt have been doing very well as well. Saudi, our neighbor, is doing an amazing. How do you see their development and the growth that is happening in the neighboring countries will affect the UAE?
Yeah, so and Egypt loves the UAE, clearly. A lot of Egypt ultra high net worth have restructured some of their holdings, whether operational or not, through the UAE. Why? Because they want a credible head of their empire that can interact from a tier 1 financial jurisdiction that has the same culture, same values, not too far from them. So they could have gone to Luxembourg, to Switzerland, to the UK. Today, the reality is they are coming here more. So super interesting. So our firm view, we are based in ADGM, we are based in the AFC. There is, for us currently, no real reason to go to Saudi because we love tier 1 financial centers. Saudi economy, thumb up. We're big fans. We are monitoring very closely. We do a lot of work for Saudi families. But from here, KSA as a financial center today, it is not a global financial center.
Yeah.
It is an international financial center, an emerging one at that. So Riyadh is 84th in the world, according to the latest study. It's stable. It's not even on the rise because everything is so new. Now, that doesn't mean that it may turbocharge within 2 or 3 years. People have big ambitions in Saudi, clearly. But I think that if Saudi is to rise as we all expect it to, it's only gravy for the UAE because you can work in clubs. It's like if you are a club of corporate services providers or law firms that actually work in good intelligence and share data, everyone rises.
I want to take it back to the corporate structures and in particular to the foundations.
Yeah.
You're known in the UAE as the godfather of the UAE foundations, and you promote it the most, and you like the structure very well.
Yeah.
You have mentioned as well that since January 2023 until now, maybe half of the foundations were established.
Yeah.
So where do you see the future of this corporate structure?
So we have entered the era of mainstream. So clearly it's not going anywhere. I can tell you, it looks like much, but the level of penetration is still too low. I go to Abu Dhabi a lot. We have an office there. We see local families. We are now starting an initiative with the Abu Dhabi DED so that every family is made aware of the tool, of its benefit, of its existence for intergenerational legacy planning. The corporate tax aspect and benefit, this is gravy. But to me, the most important is that all these families that have built substantial wealth do not destroy it as a result of poor succession planning. So I think it will continue to explode. I think that most of the corporate registries that are not sophisticated will disappear. There are a few in Dubai which I do not believe have a future. They were very useful in the past to grow this place, but it's time to move on to a 2.0, 3.0 version. And most of these structures are in the AFCs. To it, and the ADGM and Russell Kema. To it, there's 5,000 corporate services providers today in this country. This is too much.
Yes.
And the regulation on these are rising, and it's good because it protects the jurisdiction. Do you know how many corporate services providers operate out of either ADGM or the AFC compared to these 5,000?
I think in ADGM the maximum is like 55 or 60, and DIC maybe less than 10.
You are very good. Almost there. So 75 between ADGM and the AFC. Wow. And that's important for the market to be aware of.
Yeah.
Because when someone goes to a sophisticated firm like yours or happens to pass through the door of MHQ, we tell them about everything, and we tell them that best practice is in these two centers. Unfortunately, some clients will then go and double check and triple check with some other of these 5,000 people. So it's untested, it's not really good. Why? Because they are not allowed to offer this service out of these two centers. So this, to me, you said, where is it going? Is the challenge of getting rid of those CSPs that are unwilling to evolve in line with the parameters of the UAE being global financial center, much more knowledge on the structure. And the last is the banks need to come to the party and become better at understanding the tool and servicing it, both from an operational bank account standpoint, but also from a financing standpoint. To it, we have conducted a study last year with GSB, the IFC firm, on financing assets under foundation. We surveyed 80 financial institutions. Only 20% of these 80 were telling us we are able to look into the opportunity. None had a policy in place that was focused on the opportunity. Yet, if I talk to the entrepreneurs at large in the Middle East, 85% are in the Middle East. Most of them have leverage. So if I want to restructure that, I actually need the bank to be part of that. I need to be able to refinance my credit line, understanding this tool that is coming. This, we believe, is the biggest opportunities for bank and financial institution in the Middle East ever, is to understand the tool, the flow, and then to be able to capture a new flow of business. The banks that will have a strategy will win. The banks that will not disappear, but lose out.
This is one of the most interesting things I heard about foundations. And I'll be very, very honest. I would like to deliver a message to all the UAE banks, whether local or they are foreign banks and they're registered here. They have to understand foundations. They have to study it. They have to put policies to open the bank accounts. It is extremely difficult to educate and to teach someone from a bank where we apply to open a bank account for a foundation. It takes a little bit of time if you're not going to private banking or wealth management firms. If you just go to local bank who you want to open a bank account, there's some hurdles. And I think if you manage to get a bank to finance a foundation and give them leverage on their assets, which is quite significant at the moment, that will change the game, and it will enter a new player into a new client, completely huge new client for the banking sector. So,
and we're not the specialist of that, but we have managed for a few clients to remortgage their house, which they settled onto a foundation. We have managed to repackage credit lines done to a corporate that was also restructured on a foundation, but it's on an ad hoc basis. It takes a lot of effort. Not necessarily a lot of time, a lot of effort. We're enthusiastic people at MHQ, so we love what we do and we do not have a problem educating, re-educating, etc. But banks are driven by risk. When they see something that they perceive as new or slightly more riskier, often they have cold feet and they send it to someone that is in the legal department. What we want is to sit there at a table with them, explain, and to what is the biggest issue actually? It's potentially reclaim the asset if you have a default.
Yeah.
If you have a mortgage on a property today and you default, whether it is in your name, in a company or in a foundation, there's no difference in reclaiming that asset. So there should not be a difference in treatment in terms of credit line you get. Yet the market tells us that they view this as different between an individual, a corporate, and a foundation. We think it is incorrect. It will change. The question is how fast.
True. If I ask you to introduce one new law to the UAE, which one would you think of?
So what can I disclose, because we are already working on it. So we have done quite a lot of stuff over the past few years. So if you recall, foundation were introduced, the sophisticated SPVs or prescribed company in the two financial centers, so that it opened these two centers
Yes.
to the masses instead of just being focused on selling real estate. That was brilliant. The golden visa, I think, was fantastic, but very tied up to the golden visa was something that we also lobbied for, which was the new tax resident certificate regimes. So this came, still need a bit of fine tuning. I would say two rules that are coming. One is right now you can get a golden visa if you have an investment in your name. Unfortunately, if
not the
it is
foundation.
in the foundation
Yeah.
that you have set up, committed the money for, and are the beneficiary of your wife, you do not qualify. That is silly. It needs to change. The government is aware. It's going through the motions, but it's still not their mainstream. I predict that this will change. It's not a rule, it's a practice, but this needs to change. The definition of what is a qualifying investment for golden visa purposes need to change, need to be enlarged. Two, we talked proprietary investment. We talked attracting the financial players, banks, asset managers, fund managers, and you have seen a lot, no doubt, a lot of global fund players coming here. Now, not all these fund players are actually setting up and launching local funds. It's starting. So what is required, in our view, is the sophisticated family need to have a tool that is a low regulation or unregulated fund-like structure to be able to pool with their friends and over time, increase it, decrease it, something very flexible to be able to do pool financing for one project at a time. Luckily, it exists. It's called the CCAV in Luxembourg. It's called the VCC in Singapore. And guess what? It's coming in a financial center near you in the coming weeks.
We worked together and we were colleagues back in the days, many years ago. Not that we are too old, but we are decently aged.
Yeah, I was young and good looking at the time.
Still very well dressed and good looking. I know as well that you are a voracious reader, and I would like that you recommend a book to our audience or something that interesting that you would recommend to read.
So to add to your pile here, yeah, no, very happy to. It's funny. It's at the firm since inception. So we launched in 2009, and every year we had a book of the year that I picked amongst what we had and that we give to friends, to our staff, to clients, and to people that have been helping us just as a small token of appreciation. I think it's a lost art to give.
I got a few of them.
Yeah. So what do we have this year? So last year we did a fantastic book about humor. Seriously, that's how it's called, humor seriously, and it is a book about how you can use humor to do better business with all the guidelines around this, not making fun of your staff, but actually making fun of yourself and to use that to dissipate tension. So humor seriously was our last year books, great. This year we have Reverberation, excellent book. It's, you like music, I'm sure.
Yes.
So that's a book about how to do everything better with music. And it's not only how, but why. So you want to get motivated, you put some sort of music. You want to relax, you put some sort of music. And you want to spend some time with your wife, you put something else.
That's very interesting. Thank you very much. And make sure that I get these two books, one from you and the other one I would buy. And thanks. With this, I would like to thank you so much for coming. This was really fun. And hopefully we'll invite you again and again to talk about the new legislations when they come in force.
Anytime you need us, but many thanks and congrats. What you're doing is really pushing the industry. It's good. It is important that people like you actually talk to the masses and explain in simple words what sometimes lawyers tend to overcomplicate. Keep it simple. Keep on doing what you're doing. Thank you, Ahmed.
Thank you so much, Yann. With this, I would like to thank you very much for being patient and hearing and watching the podcast until the end. This is your dose from Monday Legal. See you next week.